Hello, everybody. This is Morten from Inkish. I know you heard this a couple of hundred times now, but nevertheless, it's always fun to invite people for having an understanding of what they do. And today, I have the pleasure of talking to my good friend Henrik Müller Hansen from Gelato Connect. We met each other a couple of months ago in an event in Stockholm, and then Henrik was also participating in our non-event in Copenhagen in December. So Henrik, welcome here on English.
Thank you so much, Morten. And it was a great event in Denmark. I often think when you meet this industry, I'm struck by how many good-hearted and just really nice people are operating in this industry. So I came with a lot of energy, which I tried to always carry with me, but I left with even more energy. So thank you, Morten. It was really well organized.
Thank you. So what you're saying, Henrik, is that we have actually invented fusion together. Because if you bring a little energy in and bring more out, we have cracked the code, right?
Yeah, let's keep it like that. I won't argue.
Fantastic. Henrik, Gelato, it has had or have still maybe some iterations over the 15 years that you have been working with Gelato. And it is, if I should be a little bit provocative, it seems that it sometimes pops up and then it has a more quiet life and then it pops up again. And before this interview, I was actually researching a lot, but a little bit, and I saw that every time it pops up, it is often because there are like quite great new things being presented from your company. I remember there was like one article in a Swedish media with Branks call from ller, where it was like an article about now you offered APIs, and then there was like, so it is like a constant positive movement. How do you keep yourself going? Because I mean, as a leader and as a very instrumental in the journey of Gelato, how do you manage to keep yourself on top of everything all the time?
Well, I mean, first of all, I never seek media attention, like ever. I actually don't, no offense. I don't like to be in the press. I don't like to be in the media. What I love is building, and this might sound a bit trite, but this is what I really feel, so I'll say it anyway. I want to build something that the next generation can use. Before I founded this company, I was very fortunate to work with Jan Stenbeck. Jan Stenbeck founded a bunch of companies, like Tele2, Vodafone, Metro International, Millicom, Transcom. He founded 5 unicorns and 60 other companies. I got so inspired by Jan on so many different dimensions. But one thing he often said is, and you'll laugh at this because you're from the Nordics, he said the only thing that is not taxed in the Nordics is thinking big. So you should think big every single day. So, that has driven me, the unique opportunity to work side by side with Mr. Stenbeck. And then the other person I reported to was Lars Johan Jarnheimer, who's now the chairman of IKEA. So I was right in the midst of a mentorship hurricane after I left university. Then after that, I started there 2000. Jan Stenbeck passed away August 2002. He was 56, far too young. And then I became CEO for Tele2 in Norway. And Tele2 in Norway was when I joined like $200 million and when I left $400 million. And I worked there for 3 years. And I couldn't figure out why I was so unhappy despite making so much money. I was like 32, 33. And I had, almost like $1 million in salary, if you include the bonus and everything. And I was still miserable. So what I realized then was I am absolutely not motivated by money. And I've been fortunate enough to understand that at a very young age. So I resigned because I didn't feel that I did anything that I was particularly proud of. So what did I then do? I used Jan Stenbeck's. It's not like I am a smart guy sitting down and popping an idea. Jan Stenbeck had different rules that he used when he looked at different industries. And so he said, find a big industry, find an industry that is overcapitalized, find an industry that is not efficiently funneling orders. Think about telecom, think about media, think about radio, right? But then also think about printing when you hear this, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then when you find that industry, build a software that connects it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do that, you will be able to more effectively produce and move towards the demand in that industry and match it all together. And so really from day one, I didn't ever want to invest in fixed assets because in this industry, it's 6 times more assets than demand, 6 times more capacity than demand. There was no software. There was very isolistic viewpoints on every printer was like competing with every printer. And I was like shocked when I came into this industry because everyone was competing with everyone.
And it's funny, sorry to interrupt you, it's funny you mentioned that because I think the first time I heard about you and Gelato, and correct me if I remember wrong, but that was like basically one of the initial business models was basically to utilizing the overcapacity and basically go to a printing company and see, are you using all your shifts? No, can we buy one shift, right? So that was
that was the starting point. And you know why? Because when Jan Stenbeck said we were going to become a virtual mobile operator, the network operators, the owners of the base stations and the capacity, they said 30 minutes per year, we are fully loaded with maximum demand. And that is 10 to 12 and 20 past 12 during New Year's Eve. And
I was about to say.
Yes. And then there is like 90% empty capacity. So I was like, okay, what if we take this and we move into the printing industry? And we do what Jan Stenbeck taught me in the mobile. And so then you come back to your questions like, what keeps me going? That story there, coupled with, I spent 2 years in the underwater demolition team. And what I found there was a group of people that are not the macho people. They're not the tough guys. They're really the people that want to work in a great team. They try to, we have 3 rules. Like if you don't know, say you don't know. If you make a mistake, apologize. And if you need help, raise your hand and say, I need help. So I also have that like team spirit that I missed in Tele2. And so I promised myself 2 things. 1, I want to build something that the next generation can use. And 2, I want to do it with people that I love working with. So one of the first people I called is Fredrik, who who is in Malmö. He hired me to Tele2 26 years ago. I had my interview with Fredrik because he worked at Tele2 in 1999. And now we are working together. And, so those really are the things that propel me. I have 3 children. There are obvious things that are not working in the manufacturing industry. I believe that Gelato can play a role to more effectively match supply and demand. And that's really, the team spirit, my vision, or our vision is what keeps me going day and night. But it's been a roller coaster, like all journeys.
Yeah. I'm not questioning the value of having a roller coaster because that is also being agile, adapting, learning, get up on the horse, basically try to make it even better. So I think that maybe in Scandinavia we have this little bit culture that if we have roller coasters it's bad, but in America it's good because you learn from it, right? Let us move on a little bit because I understand what drives you now, and I think that what I see when I hear you and when I see what Gelato present to the public, it is visionary. I think it's good seeing that this overcapacity can be utilized better, and therefore selling products in an overcapacity market with no capex investment obviously is an advantage. So let me ask you something, because the webinar that you had today, and I saw that too, it was a lot about process. It was a lot about there was like an example of where you had like a comma separated file where you basically throw it in, and then it created a lot of photo books in an automation based on what you call agents in the Gelato universe. What is more difficult, selling or producing?
I think today we need to, as an industry, define selling. So in my world, you go back, I don't know if there is a book that I recommend all of you to read, which is called The Innovator's Dilemma, Clayton Christensen.
Mm.
And so he mentions he speaks about the notion of value network. This industry has grown up with offset printing, and then digital has kind of squeezed itself in, but it's not bespoke. It's not the perfected artist that can smell the color, and the consumers don't care about it. I'm sorry, like, I apologize to the whole industry. The consumer don't care about that. And especially not the Gen Zs and the millennials. What they care about is personalized products produced on demand, locally, preferably in the city you live by or live in. Selling has to be redefined from the industry's perspective. Our mission, our job as an industry, working together, and I want to emphasize that because, again, I'm always so surprised. I can speak to a printer. I spoke to one in the UK. They have 3 engineers, and they think they are a software company. Those engineers are basically just putting band-aids on stuff that they have developed over the last 10, 15 years. It is a disaster for the growth of the industry when we don't understand what we don't understand. And so the example I take, if you're going to climb Mount Everest, you don't go and sew a sleeping bag. You don't go and do your own shoes. You don't develop your own map. You buy stuff from other players that know what they're doing. That is what this industry is really, really not good at doing. So if you think about selling versus producing, producing is what this industry knows. I usually say I'm not worried about producing. I'm worried about us not understanding where the customer's demand is going. The customer today is not the customer 15 years ago. What is the average age, do you think, in many, let's take Inkish, let's take any industry event. What is the average age? How many are Gen Zs? How many are millennials? And how many are our age?
That is a question that is often asked and discussed in numerous events, and of course it has something to do with the general demography in the societies as well. But it's also about how you are able to attract young people to an industry. And I think you're right that in this industry, when we smell and bite and touch and watch the spine test, of course that is attractive to some other people than the people that like to be with AI and computers and rocket science and all these kind of things that are way more interesting in especially to younger people because they have grown up with the internet and with machines. But the reason I was asking is not so much because a question that you of course understand the processes. The reason why I was asking was, or is, because it's still a question, is like if you have, when you talk about an overcapacity in the market, it is simply because the demand is sometimes declining faster than the depreciation of the machines and the technology in the market. Plus, there has been an overcapacity in a long time, because when you go to some of the printing companies, they have full utilization, many of, or some of them, and then you have other companies that have zero utilization of it. So it's very, very spread out. The way I see it, we have made about 3,000 films now from several hundred printing companies, and obviously, when we visit printing companies, we are always thrown to the ones that are successful and that understand the things that you talk about. So I'm the reason. So I mean, basically, let's say that now you as a company facilitate a channel between a producer in Oslo to a customer in Oslo, and that product is domestically and locally produced. You still need to go and find that customer. You still need to approach that customer in order to to get the credit card swiped. And I'm just wondering, because when we look at volume business, I'm talking about this often also to online printers, because they are very sensitive to big changes in demand. And I'm just wondering, because since you don't have any capex investments in printing presses, things like that, you're less fragile when it comes to that kind of thing, because you can scale dynamically very fast. But still, there needs to be somebody who's investing in these expensive machines in order to produce what we need, right?
Yeah, which is precisely why you need to work together.
Mhm.
And we don't
I like
have,
that. I like that approach. Yeah,
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 yeah, no, we don't have in this industry, we've never stood in front of such exponential growth opportunity.
yeah.
I firmly believe that. And the example I can take, let me take a couple of examples. So first of all, who would ever believe that we would have so many wars fighting in 2025? What does that do to local production and the demand for local production? Look at the political divide between nations and continents. What will that do to trade barriers? What will that do to local production? Think about the EU legislation on sustainability. How will that drive local production and the demand for local?
Mhm.
Think about the production technologies, the machine vendors.
Mhm.
I am so incredibly impressed
Mhm.
by Canon, HP Indigo, Ricoh, Konica Minolta, Fuji, Xerox, like what they have been able to do during the last, and Landa, not to say the least, right?
Mhm.
If you look at what these all machine vendors have been able to produce
Mhm.
during the last 10, 15 years, that in itself is a driver
Mhm.
of
Of course.
the ability,
Mhm.
ability to produce locally and on demand. And
Mhm.
then you say, well, you don't own CapEx. Well, we take so many big investments every year. Just bear with me here in software. But when they don't fill the machines with products, despite the creator economy going from 10 years ago, basically zero,
Mhm.
to this year around $300 billion,
Mhm.
which, by the way, is almost 10 times larger than music,
Mhm.
we don't have a demand problem.
Mhm.
We have a
Okay,
problem
I
in
get it. I get it.
effectively getting the
Yeah.
orders
Mm.
organized,
Mm.
streamlined into the local printers' machines
Mm.
and out the other end.
Mm.
Now, the real problem in the industry, I believe, is something we never speak about, which is the procurement and the logistics. The industry is obsessed about the machine. The industry is obsessed about the workflow. We believe the workflow is actually the least complicated.
Mm.
It is much more complicated, especially as we move into e-commerce and different demands, broader product categories, to sort out procurement
Mhm.
and to instantly, within a millisecond,
Mm.
pick the right carrier, the right package, the
Mm.
right shipping address, and get everything back into the back end, fully tracked, so that you can do customer service.
Mm.
Like, so the industry has honed in on a machine park with one workflow.
Mhm.
We turn that value chain horizontally,
Mm.
and we want to connect procurement, all the machines, all the products, and the logistics in one single software.
Mm.
The profitability that has, as a result, is significant.
Mm. I get you 1,000%, and I agree on that one. And I'm sorry that I didn't think about that. There was a that not even not just the creators economy, but also the demand in general for almost any products in the world is always about streamlining the operation to get it to exactly as you say. The geopolitical things is probably creating even more opportunities than we have ever thought of, right?
100%.
Yeah, and as you said, basically, who could have foreseen that? Nobody. And what happens now is basically that because of these geopolitical things, the supply and demand will probably change and need something like Gelato to be sure that it actually, and after the wars, the world will just become even better for this online environment and this collaboration. Super great. In your presentations from today, also, one of the things that I was actually, I think you were really smart at this. I mean, because you're very good at, and as also from Stockholm, I was really, uh, I think you're really good at presenting, let's say, the potential in the market and how technology can bridge that into to something that is very valuable for the players that are, for example, using Gelato Connect. One of the I would say, I know it's one of many today, but May last year, you announced the collaboration with Exacta, which is like one of the bigger Swedish printing companies. And they, as far as I remember, they announced that they will actually exclusively use Gelato as the, let's say, the driver and the source for the production. Do that do that, let's say, does that create a dependency on your ability to drive that market to them that could potentially make them very fragile? And the reason why I'm asking is because I know more printers are looking into working closely with Gelato in order to take advantage of all the really positive things you talk about. But does it create also a dependency problem that I guess that many that owns, especially people that owns equity, can be afraid of?
So I appreciate that you bring this question up, because this is the other question, the two questions that this industry keeps coming back to. One, how can I kill the other printers and protect my own business and everything is confidential, blah, blah, blah. The other is, what are
I
the
don't think I
risks?
said that right.
No, 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 not you. No, 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 no. This is like, this is general in the industry. The
Mm.
other question comes to your question here is, do I become too dependent here? I want to keep it in house. I want to build my own stuff. This is a recipe for disaster. And
Yeah.
I also understand, Morten, that you're speaking about the volume you're getting
No,
from us
no, no, no.
and
Actually,
the software.
no. Actually, no. Actually, it has nothing to do with having these. Some people urging to make their own things. That's not the question. The question is more related to that. If I've been working in printing companies for some years, right? And when you looked at the owner owning your customers, because it's always like if you have a platform economy, which I think is, I don't know if you like that term, but that is, I think is also a reasonable saying. Then it's about who owns the customer when the day is over, who owns the, let's say, the right to negotiate prices and basically make sure that you can be profitable enough on your investments. Because uh, even though there's an overcapacity, the printing companies that take advantage of the of what you offer will still need to invest in new technology from time to time. And I'm not the devil's advocate here. I'm just trying to understand, because if I was a printing company, that would be a question that I would ask you.
But I don't view you as the devil's advocate. I view this at you're teeing it up for me to be able to explain what gelato is about. And I will explain with an analogy. So if you go back, I just read another book, The NVIDIA Way. You go back and you look at how NVIDIA segmented the market. You are basically speaking, Morten, about NVIDIA going to the old server parks, competing with HP, with Sun Microsystems, and with Dell. Forget about that. Like, owning your customers and pricing and stuff like that, that is like, you don't own the customer any longer. It's not how the world works. And by the way, I was just in Rome on a CEO summit with Inside Partners. There was one of the most prominent kind of social media leaders in the world. If you think about next year, about 50 to 65% of all decisions in companies will be impacted by Gen Zs and millennials.
Mm-hmm.
Rethink how you think about customers. Now back to NVIDIA. So what NVIDIA did, they said, we're not going to these old server parks, to the old offset customers, the 5,000 brochures, the 50,000 flyers. We go to the gaming industry, we go to the car industry, and we reinvent how you can access compute power. I want to reinvent how we can access print power.
Mm.
And through Gelato, by bringing procurement, production, and logistics into one single unit,
Mm-hmm.
we are building markets.
Mm.
We are not threatening
No,
markets.
no.
And by the
Okay.
way,
Mhm.
these markets are growing exponentially.
Mm.
They are
But
growing exponentially.
but
It's the old markets, it's the
mm.
old customers that are dying.
Okay, but let me because I agree with what you're saying. So either I'm not expressing myself good enough, or am I misunderstanding what you're saying? Let's say that you are Arla Foods, and Arla Foods needs to make 50 billion milk cartons a year. That kind of democratization of process is not likely to be individualized on one and go 10 milk cartons for each cow in Norway and Denmark, and then the farmer is going back to deliver this. There will be a percentage of this of the consumers that would like to have something that is done like this, but there's still a huge industrial segment, and I'm just trying to understand. So you think that will also change that 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 you don't? And when I talk about owning a customer, I never thought that you own a customer. You can have a customer as long as you can deliver and as long as everything is aligned with it. But when I talk about owning a customer, it's typically that you have, maybe you say that's old school too, but you have like a procurement process. The industrial scale of production is required because you need to have as low price as possible on uh, paper and cardboard, and you need to have machines that you can be sure that is the depreciation of the machines has over a period of time been profitable investment and all these kind of things. And I'm not questioning that there's a huge creators market and creator economy, but I don't think that the industrial need for print is just going away any near time.
So I've never said that. And
No, no,
and I've
I
never
know, but I'm just trying to understand, because when we
yeah,
talk about the ownership of a customer, it is
I
more
know,
the
but
yeah.
I'm saying that Arla producing 1 billion cartons,
Mm,
that's not the problem. We know how to do that. We've done that since Gutenberg.
mm,
The problem is that we need to supply completely new customer demands. And my question is this: did Uber negatively impact the number of taxi rides you take? My second question is, did Airbnb reduce traveling or reduce the hotel nights?
okay.
What we are speaking about in Gelato
Mm,
is that this industry needs to rethink what software power you need
mm,
to support. And this is not only about the creator economy. And I'll give you another example, but just hear me out here. Like, this industry needs one software to support all products, all machines, and end to end, from procurement to production to logistics. And I'll give you one example, which is a huge company, Starbucks. So Starbucks had basically no sales on merchandise 15 years ago. People dispute. Some people say it's 6 billion, others say 10, others say 8. It's a huge revenue stream today to fully personalize mugs, t-shirts, coasters, pencils, water bottles. What Gelato can do to the industry is allow Starbucks to handle 37,000 coffee shops in 82 countries with local on-demand personalized production, and add markets just like Nvidia, just like Uber, just like Airbnb, adds new value networks to this industry.
mhm.
That is what we want to do. And this thing about, I'm vulnerable, or who owns the customer, I think more than anything, it is a threat to these big investments that our printers and partners are making across the planet,
Mhm,
more than it is an opportunity.
mm.
And I want to end on just this question on the following. AWS is an Amazon company, Amazon Web Services. Amazon Prime, not surprisingly, are using AWS. But so is Netflix. And who is Amazon Prime's biggest competitor? Netflix.
Mhm.
So, in the age of globalism, from a software and platform perspective, one has to understand that Netflix never intended to go and build their own server park.
Mhm.
They went to AWS. And that makes 1 plus 1, 7. It doesn't make it 0.5.
I like that. I like everything you said, and sometimes I feel like when I talk to bright people like you, I feel like a very old man because it sounds like I don't understand the economy. The reason why I have been asking these questions because we
I
are,
don't view that. Honestly,
yeah,
Morten, I view your questions as a representative of what you hear when you speak to printers. That's how I view it. I don't.
thank you.
I met you, and I don't think that is. I'm not interpreting in that
No,
way.
no. The reason why I'm saying this is also because I don't represent anybody but English, but I think that what is interesting and the reason why I asked you for this interview, and I would like to have a follow up if you're okay with you, because I think this is
Absolutely,
really interesting.
absolutely.
I think that what is important is that when you see new services, it can be Gelato, it can be Cloud Printer, it can be Coco, it can be some of all these new, let's say, software companies that you hear about as a printer. It might be confusing for some of them to understand what is the scope of the business opportunity. So the questions I try to ask is actually to understand where Gelato fits, because um, I think after talking to you that the scope is enormous. I think that Gelato has a really, first of all, I think you're really great at explaining what you want to achieve and how you see Gelato as a driver for it. But I also see that Gelato is addressing a very specific segment that is maybe unidentified right now, because I can ask the same question back to you and say that if we're not driving more or less taxis than after Uber, or we're not having less travel because of Airbnb, maybe you are adding a layer to the printing industry that
That's
has
what
maybe
I
a
am.
higher value, and
That
still
is
there's
what
a
I am
room for,
committed to.
yeah, yeah,
That is my belief. I'm
yeah,
convinced that
yeah,
we are adding layers.
yeah.
And by the way, I also want to point this out. I said I was impressed with machine vendors, but
Mm.
we are also very impressed with the partners that we have.
Of
Like,
course.
and you mentioned Exacta.
Mm.
Well, we've signed Paul Hudson,
Mm.
we've signed Anstat and Matt, we've signed Quantum with
Mm.
Cheryl and her team, we've
Mm.
signed CBI,
Mm.
we signed DPI, we have GSB in New York, we
Mm.
have many printers in the US, we have many printers in Europe that are now seeing
Mm.
that the new demand, the new market
Mm.
need a vertical,
Mm.
not a vertical, sorry, horizontal software
Yeah.
that can connect all the different dimensions in the print hub.
Do you know the phrase the new print?
No, please.
Okay, new print was one of Frank Romano's students at Rochester Institute for Technology that wrote a book called a new print, maybe 10, 15 years ago, something like that. And the interesting thing, and that is, and I want this to be like the ending from my point
Yeah.
this time. I think we should talk again. But new print is basically that in the old times when you had like newspapers and yellow pages and that kind of thing, print was very much Bibles, newspapers, phone books, this kind of thing, and that was like the printing industry, more or less, books. And with new print, it was like, okay, for example, today we see signage and large format. We see that as part of the printing industry, but signage was its own industry 15, 20 years ago. 3D print is still like, is it part of the printing industry or is it another manufacturing? So if you have signage, it's also becoming part of the printing industry. And it's kind of funny to think of, because when some people talk the industry down because certain segments like Yellow Pages and IKEA catalogs is shrinking in the industry, other segments like the one that you are adding to it is growing at a pace that basically probably outperforms. So that, and the reason I say this is just because for the people watching this conversation with you, I think this is a matter of understanding that if you see a business where you have been traditionally operating, as I said, as owning the customer and being in a very protective solution and maybe made your own MIS system or Excel sheet that you use for pricing, etc., etc. This is an opportunity that you should look into because the market is changing. The market is developing into what technology can drive, what the customers can drive because the requirements and demands are changing. And I just remembered the new print because that also created some kind of discussions. When I was in Stockholm, you spoke about the textile industry that I think we should also talk about in another episode, because that is again a thing that is extremely polluting industry unless you do it digitally on demand. And there's a lot of waste in that industry that can also be part of the creator economy. And I just wanted to bring it to your attention, Henrik, because I think there's a lot of things that you do that potentially bring maybe even new industries in what we would call the printing industry. I mean, long speech, sorry.
Yeah, no, when I called my dear mother and said, I'm going into the print industry, she began to cry. That is not a joke. Yeah. She was terrified and she said, the print industry is dying. So let me slice this up because this is very, very important. Of course, in a declining market, you are very protectionistic. You cling on to your customers because you know the market is declining. What I'm trying to say to everyone listening to this is we have never ever stood in front of a more exciting growth opportunity. And let me bring that into numbers. So the music industry today is around $40 billion. When I started this company, the digital print industry was about $80 billion. Now it's about $220 billion. When you read the estimations for digital printing, this is only digital printing. They're speaking about a growth of $90 billion coming 5 years. So we are adding to music industry. I am telling the whole industry, we must stop competing with each other. We must start working together and instead make sure that we cater for your 3 children, Morten, for my 3 children that are in the demand curve. They are driving the demand. And when it comes to owning customers, owning machines, driving demand, I think this industry, on a general term, we should only focus on customer. What is the customer demand? What is it that they are buying? They don't buy a machine. They don't buy a certain paper. They buy a product. And our task, our job, I mean, in the ideal world, I would love to build a network that we can go to Starbucks and we can say, we can now fulfill in your 82 countries and your 37,000 stores, everything with local on-demand production, fully personalized down to the single mug.
I mean, great vision. And I don't think you will be unemployed the next couple of days.
We'll see.
We'll see. Henrik, I will reach out to you tomorrow and see if we can schedule a follow-up on this one. I hope you enjoyed it. I had a fantastic time.
No, absolutely. And I know it's your son's birthday today, so congratulations and give him all my best.
I will.